Hello, hello. I have a demonstration here for the volume of a cylinder compared to the volume of a cone. It is important that when we do this, we have a cylinder and a cone with the same radius. And so if I match these up, I can see, yep, they have the same circumference, same diameter, same radius, and the same height. So if I put one next to the other, yep, same height. I can stick this right in and we see we've got the same height. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up the cone, and I'm going to see how many times I have to fill up the cone to get the cylinder to be completely full. So let's see, I'm going to fill up the cone. Okay, there's 1, 2, and 3. And so we are going to see if this completely fills it up. And look at that. We fill the cone 3 times to fill the cylinder. And so we know that the cone has a volume that is 1/3 the volume of the cylinder. And so if you know the volume of a cylinder, pi times r squared times h, so pi times radius squared times height, you're just going to divide that by 3 to get the volume of the cone with the same radius and same height. Now let's look at some examples of how to solve math problems like this. You just saw an example of why the volume of a cone is 1/3 the volume of a cylinder with the same base and height. And so our formula for the volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared height, where r is radius and h is height. Make sure you've got this down in your notes, and we're going to go ahead and do a couple of examples. Here we have a cone with a radius of 9 and a height of 11. Radius is half the circle, half the diameter, which is the distance across the circle, and this is your height. And so we've got to start with our formula, which is 1/3 pi r squared times height. I'm going to plug in what I know. I know 1/3 stays 1/3. I know pi is 3.14 approximately. I know radius is 9, and I know height is 11. I can put this all in my calculator all at once, and I get a volume of 932 58/100 of a centimeter, and that is cubed. And that is your volume. Another way to solve this that's actually more accurate is to leave your answer in terms of pi. And what that means is that you're going to multiply all of these numbers together, and you're going to move pi over here to the end, and then your answer is going to have a pi in it. And so when I do that, down here, I'm going to do 1/3 times radius squared, which is 9, times your height, which is 11, times pi. And I'm not going to replace pi with 3.14. I'm just going to multiply these 3 numbers, which gives me 297. And then I'm going to put my pi. And my unit is still centimeters cubed. So if I leave it in terms of pi, pi goes on forever, and so this number is actually going to go on forever. It's going to be much more accurate than this number, and so when you can leave your answer in terms of pi, you're going to have a better answer. And this is, leaving it in terms of pi is going to help you solve a few problems as well. So let's go ahead and solve another problem that we are going to leave in terms of pi. Here we have a cone that I want to find the volume of. I've already written out the volume formula because That's my recipe. I've always got to go back and follow that in order to have solved the problems well and as best as possible. I know I need to plug in what I know. I'm going to leave this in terms of pi, so I'm going to go ahead and move my pi over here. And I'm going to put the rest of the numbers. So 1/3 times radius squared, radius is 8, times height. Wait a second, height is here. And I don't see what height is. It's not labeled, it's not given to me. But what I do see is I see in green here a right triangle. I'm going to go ahead and draw my right triangle down here. I see that a leg is 8. I don't know this leg. And the hypotenuse is 17. If I remember the Pythagorean theorem, I remember that leg squared plus leg squared, that leg is 8, equals the hypotenuse squared. I remember that I end up subtracting. I end up doing 17 squared minus 8 squared. That's how we would get L by itself. And 17 squared minus 8 squared gives me 225. So L squared equals 225. To get L, I just take the square root. The square root of 225 is 15. And so now I know that this length right here is 15. So that is my height. My height of the cone is 15. Now I can go ahead and solve that. I multiply out this, this, and this, and that gives me 320 pi. Volume is always units to the third power. So if you don't have units, just say units to the third power. And there's your answer in terms of pi. No need to multiply by 3.14. Let's go to our next example. This example is a little bit different. In this problem, I'm telling you that the volume of a cone is 156 pi centimeters cubed. I'm telling you that the height of the cone is 13 centimeters. And we need to figure out what the radius is. Okay, so I'm always going to start with my map. Volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. And I'm still going to plug in what I know. So I have my formula, still going to plug in what I know. Volume, I know this time, 156 pi. I don't have to put units in when I'm solving an equation. We'll put units in at the end. So volume was 156 pi. 1/3 stays as 1/3. Just like before, I'm going to move pi to the end. R squared is, oh, we don't know R, right? That's what we're solving. So I leave that as R. My height is 13. Okay, now I'm going to multiply out what I know. I know, let's see, 1/3 times 13. That's just 13 divided by 3. And that gives me 4 1/3. R squared pi. Over here, we didn't do anything. But I want to point out that both sides are multiplied by pi. So you can divide both sides by pi, in which case pi just disappears. So really, what we're left with when we continue our equation is we are left with 156 equals 4 1/3 radius squared. And this is 4 1/3 times radius squared, so I'm going to divide by 4 1/3. And 156 divided by 4 1/3 gives me 36. and that equals radius squared. Oh, okay, so then I take the square root of 36, and that is 6. So my radius is equal to 6, and not just 6, it's a length, it is 6 centimeters. And I am done. All right, so those are the types of problems you're going to have to know how to solve. The thing that you always need to make sure of is that you always know radius and height. And if you know radius and height, you can always find the volume of the cone. Good luck.